how are we going to survive with everyone coming?
And I don't know if you guys had heard that room tax was record for 2020.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, so as much as we were expecting the downturn, I think at least in the hospitality businesses in Seaside, we've weathered pretty darn well.
Yeah, people come in and like, oh, we feel so sorry for you, we just want to come here, and you get, I appreciate that, but I'm like, oh, please stop for just a second.
But no, the reality is, our town is shut down, we're gonna come in somewhere that's
Oh, thank you so much, as I cry.
That's exactly their thing. We can't do what we can do here, so we're going to come here. And as people are, as this changes and mask requirements change stuff, people still aren't flying as much as they used to. So now we are a drivable source,
Yeah.
and you don't have to wear your mask in your car.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's also disposable income that can be spent on going away to our town, so, I mean, it all.
Yeah, I think another phenomenon that we saw or got reported was that a lot of the vacation rentals were actually, the Airbnbs and all of those were fuller.
Yes.
Because people were taking multiple weeks
Right.
away and just taking their family and quarantining here,
Yep.
as opposed to doing it at their home.
exactly.
People that had to save money in or could save money in 2020 by working from home, couldn't travel, couldn't vacation, that 2020 money that they put away for their 2020 vacation is now being compounded times 2 for 2 years worth of travel, trying to get 2 years worth of travel in one. So from an operational standpoint, working front desk, housekeeping, everything, at all 3 of my hotels during spring break, sometimes all 3 in one day. Backing up a little bit to the case counts. Case counts are being determined by just case counts, not actual hospitalizations. At what point have we ever neared 50% or any capacity in our hospital beds in the county? Does anybody know that?
Probably not, because we've sent the bad ones probably not.
Right. Right. So to my knowledge, it's not been there. So case counts being just case counts, people either asymptomatic. I have had employees test positive and never have a single symptom and have begged to get back to work, but they can't because they have to stay home. So they're counting asymptomatic as positive, as positive cases. People that are sick, positive cases, and keeping the restaurants and such.
Presumed cases.
Correct, presumed cases.
Which is anybody in the household of somebody who's positive.
Exactly. So, which has, and keeping the case count up there keeps us workloads down. Is there any way that the city can step in? I think it would have to be at county level, but the city can step in and say, listen, we're going to set our own level based off of the hospitalizations where that is where the emergency lies around. Because, 10,000 people can have the flu, but you have 10 people actually, at home or in the hospital with the flu. It's way different. Is there any way the state can step in and say, listen, we're making this decision based off of our actual hospitalization, based off the climate, based off of everything that's going on. Restaurants, you guys can open up 100%. So here's what happened at hotels when restaurants had to go down their levels. I have to now have almost 5 days a week of trash pickup. My trash cans are overflowing. There's trash every day all over my parking lots. Because the seagulls get in there, and the transient homeless population are getting into my dumpsters, and now we're paying double that we did last year for trash pickup. And at the same time as trash pickup, we're not able to do stayover services in our rooms because that's what we agreed to when we reopened. And some of our brands have also said, it's every 5 days. Our rooms are getting wear and tear a lot more than they were, and our linens and our terries. And so we are spending more money. We're making good money compared to 2019, but we're still spending more money on all of our operational costs and wear and tear in our buildings.
Probably overtime.
And overtime, because restaurants are still closed down. They're not able to, all that takeout and all the pizza. I've never seen so many pizza boxes in my lifetime as on a Friday. Friday morning, our dumpster was picked up. Saturday, when I was walking the property, I looked out there. It is overflowing, and I have trash bags all over because it's the takeout. So it is a huge snowball effect, and It doesn't make any sense to me and the majority of the people that I've talked to in Seaside as to why we're being held to a presumed case count when it should be based on hospitalization, which is what it was in the beginning. So that's kind of my 2 bits.
I don't remember when it was tied to hospitalization.
In the very beginning, they tied in all the hospitalization levels, and then it kind of flipped under the radar, and they said they're counting all cases.
No, it's cases per 1,000 residents.
Correct. Yes.
Cases per 100,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. And-
Right.
And that's a kind of a measuring stick that the governor has put, her office has put in place for the whole state.
Correct.
So your question is, could the city do something to have a local standard? And I think the answer is no.
I think the only way we could is if it was more restrictive,
Yeah, right.
not less restrictive.
But
I beg to differ.
we can try.
Well, you can make
And that's the
noise.
thing is can we try? Because it doesn't make sense that we're where we're at.
No.
It really doesn't. I
I
think.
agree.
And one case here makes a much larger difference than in a larger, even when you go cases per
Yeah.
100,000.
You know, what the mayors of the 5 cities on the coast have done in lockstep together is try to convince the governor that if she's going to change the classification, to do it with a longer lead time. So particularly you can get people in and get staff and then not have to lay them off in a week or 2 weeks.
Right.
And so we've made some progress in that area. But I just keep hoping that by the time we get to the 1st of June, there'll be a whole new standard of measurement based on the number, the CDC ruling, and then improvement in vaccinations in Oregon across the board. But in the meantime, I'm more than willing to do what you suggested to see if we can improve back to hospitalizations in our area. You know, we went for months during the pandemic with not one person hospitalized up the hill.
I know that because we housed the Providence workers at one of my hotels, and we had 5 rooms of Providence nurses or medical workers. Literally, they spent the entire week in the hotel room because they were just on call.
We were going to Providence in Portland weekly, and 60% of the nursing staff was laid off
Yep.
Yeah.
through the core of the pandemic because they weren't doing anything else.
So one thing that we noticed last year in the restaurant portion of the business was that because the restaurants are so restricted on how many people they can seat, really how many people they can serve, there really wasn't enough restaurants to serve the number of people that were in town. Where before people would not be willing to wait a half an hour for a table, they were willing to wait 2 hours for a table last summer because they couldn't eat anywhere else. And so and you hear this discussion over and over like, oh, well, should we walk downtown and try? And they would say, no, this place has an hour and a half wait, and this place has 2 hours wait, this place has 3 hours wait. 3 hours? I have 3 kids. There's no way I would wait 3 hours for a seat. But the fact of the matter is that 25%, my restaurant can seat 12 and a half people. I can serve 12 and a half people rather than 47 people. So without being able to serve that amount of people in the busy summer months, you know, there isn't enough food service to serve the amount of people who are coming to town when town is packed. Town is going to be packed. It was last year, it is going to be this year.
I haven't seen anything for several months regarding the spacing of tables.
Right.
It's been a long time since we've heard anything about that. It's not in the guidelines or
It
the
hasn't
directions
dropped,
now.
though.
It's still 25%.
Well, no, remember you had to have like 12 feet between
Right.
tables so people could be 6 feet away from anybody else walking in
Right.
and all that.
You don't think that still stands?
I haven't seen anything about it since they first started
Right.
coming through with OSHA and, you know, OLCC walking through our businesses. But since then, they've just gone to the capacities, I believe. But I don't have clarity, and I wonder if that's something that we can work to get clarity around.
I
because
think
the
that's really
25,
vitally important, because Dave's absolutely right. There hasn't been much of that anymore, and then just not that long ago, they said we could go from 6 foot to 3 foot, so where's the,
There's
where's
still
the?
capacity, but it doesn't matter really.
well,
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
it makes a
a
difference
school-
for a small
small
restaurant,
restaurant.
because 25% of what is the number? Is it the number of seats you had previously? Is it
Yeah.
the number of people you're allowed to have in your building
It's the
based on
number of
fire
people you're allowed
code?
to have
Yeah.
in
Is
space.
it, but it's not, it never, that doesn't say it anywhere.
Well, it was OLCC
Yeah,
that was
fire.
monitoring that, so it's probably the number that you claim you can have in your business to OLCC.
Which
That's
is-
what I would assume.
Which is based off of fire marshal inspection at time of, when you get your occupancy, your permit, they say you can have this many people in space, right?
So
Kind of just like a pool.
Because when we did OLCC licensing, you draw a
Floor plan.
floor plan with all your tables and your chairs. And basically, if you change a table, you have to notify the LLCC. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, a small restaurant like yours, being able to put them closer than 6 feet, having walkways, can make a huge difference towards not only having 12 people, but maybe having 20 people.
For sure.
Because you can get 80 people in there on one of your comedy nights and say, you know, fire marshal says I can have this many people.
Right.
Well, then the 6-foot rule was an arbitrary thing that even the CDC admitted was the most costly, arbitrary number that they came up with during the pandemic. When internationally,
It was
it's
1
3
meter.
feet.
Yeah, it was 1
Right,
meter.
it was
yeah.
1
meter,
meter.
right.
And that's why I said, maybe this is the time to go back to that and say, you know, internationally, it started at 3 feet. Why is it the 6 foot still needed at this point?
Well, with the lottery too, I think about right here, Brandon and I are considered 6 feet right now. I believe it. Lottery has a weird definition
I don't
of 6
know,
feet.
3 feet.
No, but it's like, yeah.
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
yeah, it's about 6 feet.
But it's like, it's a lot closer than
Right.
you would think 6 feet is.
If it's
I'm
less
not
than
saying
6
anything
feet, it
about
changes my
space.
patio configuration for
Exactly.
sure. I mean, that doubles my patio capacity.
And any outdoor seating.
So
basically.
seeing clarity of that would be fantastic.
Yeah,
for sure,
okay.
yeah.
So maybe that's something we can
Yeah.
look into this week and maybe,
Yeah, I
Help
don't
in
see
that front.
anything about how far.
yeah, I haven't seen anything about it since the very first
First, yeah.
layouts.
So here's a hopeful thought. Let's say the governor of June 1 says, I'm removing all social distancing rules and mask rules for retail and restaurants, bars, and hotels. Do you have the staff to ramp up to
No.
full capacity? And what are you going to do about that?
No one has the staff for that.
No one has the staff for it because it's been such a part of it's been such a roller coaster of, we'll open, the restaurants will open for a week. I have staff that work at Sam's as well as the hotel or another restaurant and the Roosevelt's hotel. And it was great, we hit low, they're opening the restaurants back up. Okay, so now I need to refigure, I need to hire more housekeepers to fill in this person's space, and then shut it down the next week, and they were back, can I get hours? I'm like, I just filled your position randomly, I happen to fill that person's position. So we're biting the bullet on some labor to try and keep valuable people. So no, the answer is no, because it's such a roller coaster, and they're, all the
Plus,
other.
We've definitely
Even
seen,
before
we've seen
that, though.
people leave the industry
Yeah.
because of the open,
A lot of
close,
people
open,
have.
close.
Yep.
But I
They're
mean,
finding other jobs that don't.
Right, that don't have that
That
issue.
don't
We were having this issue before, so
And
this
that's what I was
is just
gonna
made
say.
it so much worse.
Yep.
It's mentally exhausting, physically exhausting going through.
And like Carrie said, this isn't a new thing for any business here about hiring during the summer that you've had enough.
Yeah.
This is it's just quadrupled and
Yeah.
whatever, because, not only because of more people traveling, but more roles that you have to do and maintain.
And then baby boomers, like, there was baby boom, now we're going to retire boom. Like, they were going, at like a 2.5% rate every year for the last few, and then this year, probably because last year was closed, they're like, why do I go back for a year, People are retiring, and I'm, we're just going to keep on having that too. I can't believe how many of my friends have retired recently.
Right.
Like, I've never known so many people retire, and it's just because, I guess I'm being older, they're getting older, but.
So,
And it's no
doggy
fault.
point.
But.
Several
Yes.
of you were bringing
They make
in
money.
international people. Is that happening?
So where that sits is some of the countries are sending people, and it's been opened. the limitation on, I mean, one of the biggest countries was Lithuania. We still have the consulate still has not opened in Lithuania to provide the visa interviews. So, but that's essentially where we're waiting, is for them to get their interviews, to get their visas, to then come over.
Do you think there's a chance for this summer?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
I
Well,
thought Sandy
because-
said it was open on the
So
15th.
Romania,
Romania opened on the 15th.
Yeah, Romania opened on the 15th, the
think
Dominican
Jamaica's
Republic
open.
opened up the first week of June. I brought
Colombia's
from
open.
Iran this year, and they were already open, so I was able to bring them. So it's gradually reopening all those consuls again.
And then also, any student that's been to the US on one of those visas before doesn't have to re-interview.
Yeah.
So they can just, as soon as the travel's open, they can come.
Bill, you got some work in that area. Bring me in.
Well, actually, Sadie
Sadie.
and Andy had, but you know, part of solving an employment issue is, I mean, that's not just Seaside, I mean, that's
No,
everywhere.
it's everywhere.
So, I mean, part of the solution, of course, is you're gonna have to pay more to get more.
Yeah.
And then the second solution probably is you have to have a central place where people know the availability of jobs. So either it's an employment agency that we create with, you know, I'm not sure that the temporary agency in Seaside is adequate enough, nor is the job center for the state really adequate in servicing Seaside the way we want to. Maybe a centralized person or committee
It's a great idea.
that is a clearinghouse for people who need jobs and then people who need employees.
I mean, have you heard of anybody saying, boy, I'm really looking for a job and I can't find one?
No, but
Like,
they-
no, I can't.
But
It's-
I've seen them having to walk around and say.
But I
how
think
much
Bill
you're
has a
paying.
great thing. If
Yeah.
you go to one place and go, this is my skills,
Yeah.
what is available?
Exactly.
And that's the problem that
And
we're
they say,
missing.
okay, well, I can't get you in as an electrical engineer right
Right,
now.
but however, you know, it's kind of like when you go in the military, the first time you go in, after you raise your hands up, you take all these tests, and then they go, hey, this is what's available to you.
So-
You don't get to go and go, hey, I want to be a pilot today.
So if we look at the opposite of what we have, which I would say are ski resorts.
Right,
They're busy in the winter, they bring in foreign students,
Right.
but they have, because of their location, they have developed themselves as a complete destination.
Right.
So they are set up to accommodate
Yeah.
their workers that come in.
right.
And we don't have that here. So it really is a matter of, because of our seasonality, we have to be able to figure out a solution to house the people to get us through our busy season.
Right.
And I think that is the biggest.
as well as the locals too.
Yeah, for sure.
I know that one restaurant downtown that I used to work at has a cook that is currently homeless and literally sleeping on the beach. I had an employee that was pretty much homeless for a week and just got in with someone that I could have hooked him up with. And he's moving in, he had like 7,000 cash to save, but he just couldn't find a place. We lost a bartender, like one of the best I've ever had. She moved to Eugene and she couldn't find a place in like April 1st. I had another employee that luckily just found a house, but the same people, like, it's just, I can't believe how much time I spent looking for housing and I don't get a house lately. It's
Well, if we,
just such a problem.
we advertise out of town, at least I do. I advertise from Portland to Seattle to try to find employees, especially for the bigger, for our management positions. But the reality is that unless you have a line on housing here, I can't hire you.
Yeah.
I get people
So,
that come
I
and
mean-
apply and I ask them, do you live here? And they're like, well, no, I want to. Get back to me when you find a place.
And that's the thing, you now have to say that. You have to say, do you have housing? I mean,
Yeah.
I have a girl who drives from Vernonia right now,
Which is,
every day to come to work.
So let's talk a little bit about what is happening on the housing side. Because I think we can all agree that moving forward over the next 5-10 years, housing housing employees is what our businesses and our community needs.
Steve's in charge of that going.
Come on over, Steve.
we know it wasn't your fault.
And we do have some hopeful signs on the horizon regarding housing.
So, yeah.
And I mean, I think incentivization is awesome. Like, a lot of your ideas that you had are great, for sure.
So currently, there's a 40-unit project going in on Wahana. So I believe it's going to be an apartment complex right next to North Coast Family Fellowship. We've got the 58 lots that were opened up at South Wahana and Avenue S. So those are additional housing that's going in. We've got those houses on North Wahana, just north of Broadway, that are smaller houses, but I think they're still going to be very pricey.
They're taking $450,000.
Yeah, for 800 square feet.
Talking to the owner.
They've already advertised at that
Yeah.
price, haven't they?
Yeah, she's like, that's what her realtor told her that she would probably get.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, I mean, that doesn't really help the workforce housing.
No,
Right.
it doesn't.
Well,
Because I mean, I can't afford to buy that house. Like, that's not
The
a starter
added
home.
conundrum that COVID has done is it has allowed people to live wherever they want because of remote working now. So those people that were living in Portland Metro are now moving out here. People that were living in California are moving, they're moving all over. And so they are buying up that housing and driving the prices up.
Yeah.
And they're giving with cash. I have
Right.
never heard of so many people fully paying for a house with cash
Right.
on their documents anymore.
But my brother is a paramedic for the federal government, and his wife does secretarial stuff. And because of the price of the house that they sold in California, they're buying a house. They got in under the gun before they listed it at $640,000 for a 3-bedroom,
That's
2-bedroom.
local?
No, up in Tacoma
Oh,
area.
okay, yeah.
But still,
Yeah.
it's.
One of the phenomena that we see when housing that is above the workforce housing level, people move into those houses and it frees up some of the lower cost housing in the community. That's one thing you hope for. What we're hoping and trying to do at the city level is to limit the number of vacation rentals moving in. That's why we raised the business license for that and trying to limit. If all those houses are bought up for vacation rentals, then we've made no gains in terms of affordable housing.
I agree with you somewhat there, Mayor. In a normal environment, that would be the case. Right now, what we've got is all those higher end ones being bought up by people from outside the area.
You're right.
And so the people aren't moving up, they're people moving in.
Okay,
And-
quick if you want to move up.
And I think it might be valuable for us to figure out what we could do to reevaluate our need for housing property, to look at the UGB, because I think our population, just with the growth we're having, is growing faster than what PSU had estimated because of COVID.
We've got that on the agenda coming up to look at the urban growth boundary. That's always a controversial issue in this community.
Yeah, I just wonder if the data that we use for that needs to be re-updated.
Yeah, I think so.
Because I know the numbers we were looking at were very small growth, and we're not still seeing that.
Well, we know that Seaside's a great place to live.
Uh-huh.
It really is. It's a prime place to live, and for people who don't live here,
Whether you have a home or not.
whether you, I wasn't going there, David, but yes, but it really is. I mean, people who, like, Seaside has done a great job of making this a place that people build memories. And when people build memories and then retire, they want to go to a place that they built the memories. And that's where we are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people who are retiring are buying homes here. And that's great because we've done our jobs. We've built a place that people are building memories. But for our housing, it isn't helping. It doesn't help. There aren't the apartments. There aren't the lower, there just isn't. So, I'm not sure how to solve that problem without a major push in building low-income housing.
Part of the solution to that is how you do zoning here in Seaside. So if you take portions of the city, and I know that it may be difficult to isolate which portions they are, and increase the density requirements for that site. So instead of R2 or R3, you increase the density, it must be R8 or greater in that particular section of the city. So what you're doing is you're forcing the people who purchase that property to build larger apartment buildings or larger or more dense places. But you designate portions of the city where you want that to happen, and you force it. And then you give incentives for people to, you know, a certain percentage of the housing, if it's affordable housing, whichever definition you use median income or whatever it is in Seaside. If they, 20% of it has to be medium housing, and then you give them an additional height for the building, or you give them less setback, or you give them less requirements for landscaping. So you make a deal with them that the more affordable housing you build, the more units that you can build. But you have to designate certain portions of the city as high density.
That's a whole lot easier to do in a bigger city where there's a lot of real estate.
It's a long-term solution. You're not going to solve this problem today. It's something you have to, it's a lot of little things you have to do to make it happen in 5 years.
That's a great planning for long-term, that is a really good idea.
Yeah.
So while we're talking about all the housing and such, where does the city stand on, maybe this is a question for Steve, where does the city stand on infrastructure percentage to our housing capacity? So, because I know Warrenton has all these spots where developers came in and said, we're going to build apartments here, and they had to shut them down because they don't have the roads, the sewer, they don't have the basic infrastructure for it. So is there, are we good on the infrastructure where we can have the conversation?
So far.
Yeah?
Yeah, we are.
Nice.
And one of the things that our city manager really held strong on, and we fight him on our system development. And they're expensive here, and some would say that has thwarted some of the development because they're having to pay these system development charges. But that's what has kept the infrastructure in place.
That's part of the deal you make with the developer. You waive the development fees.
So the issue is those fees cannot be waived. They're regulated. Once they're put in place, they have to be charged. So in order to have a reduction on them, the money has to come from somewhere to go into that fund. And that's where, you know, we have, as a city, in the last relief plan, we have about $1.4 million coming to the city. And the city has weathered pretty darn well, and so we aren't making up negatives that a lot of cities are, where they've had reduced room tax and all these other things that we've done just fine. So that $1.4 million has a few tags on it that are want-tos that people want to spend it on. We've got a Avenue S that's going to be redone very soon, but we've got to find money for the bridge. So using that money, could be bringing in the rest of the money for that. But I would love to see some of that money go towards helping our housing issue, and perhaps being able to fund putting together an incentive program for a larger apartment complex or development, where we're talking 50 to 100 units per project, to get some of that money to pay the systems development charges. Because a 100-unit project is $1 million extra. And if we divide each unit out on rent at, say, $100 extra a month per rent, it's still a 9-year payback. So it's a lot of money for somebody to put into something that's going to be used as a rental. You pass that on, it's an extra $100 a month.
I don't suppose, you know.
Lumber's an extra $400 a month.
I don't suppose like there's any way to designate it as workforce housing and not allow for a second home, you know, somebody that's just staying there on the weekends to rent or purchase those properties, do you know?
I don't think there's
I would say
really-
not, probably not, because you
Yeah.
can't discriminate, right?
Well, you can't tell somebody that they can't use their home whenever they want to use it. if
I'm
they just
totally
keep
with
it
you
for
in spirit,
themselves.
but.
That's the zoning.
Yeah.
So if you zone it for high density, it has to be high density. And you force them to either, you know, they're not going to build condominiums. If it's far from the beach, it's going to be affordable, relatively affordable housing. But it's going to be multiple units. It's not going to be townhouses. It's not
Right.
Remember 2007?
So tell you-
everyone took everything
Tell you a
away.
little bit about a project that Andy Mercer and Bill and I are working on. We are in,
That
well,
was a secret.
well, just between us.
Just us.
But we're kind of at a, hey, Bill, we're kind of at a point where we need the businesses to participate in it.
We need their support.
Exactly,
I
well,
think
yeah.
Carrie might be
We
the
need-
only one that
we need
doesn't
their-
know
No, I know
about it.
that.
Oh, you know,
Yeah.
okay.
We need their money,
Yes, we need their money.
but I don't know that you know about it.
I do.
You do,
I had a
okay.
conversation with Andy, and
Okay, good.
I
don't
need
know
to have the
about
conversation. I need to have the conversation with,
So we're talking to SEPRD about taking a portion of Broadway, but, well, what is it, Sunset Recreation Center? Yeah, and turning it into workforce dorm-style housing to house 50 to 60 people. And so
It's a great idea.
if something like that could work out, then there's no reason that we couldn't do that elsewhere and solve, at least for the business side, taking care of that summer influx. If we can advertise at the universities here in the state and say, come, we've got a place for you to live, it's just, you know, similar to the dorms you're used to living in, come for the summer and work. You know, during the school year, maybe Classic Community College can actually attract some people because there's places for people to live and be able to go to school. And then maybe those students would stay over the summer and work.
And that'll take care of your short-term problem and then get you to the long-range solution.
Well, it takes care of our
Yeah.
annual temporary problem, but it doesn't deal with long-term workforce housing.
But
But
it buys you time.
it buys us time, and we're always going to have the summer surge.
Right.
So, you know, it may not take care of our year-round employees, but it could take care of our summer surge need.
One thing that I mean, you know too, because I'm sure it affects you the same, is that the Lithuanians come just slightly later than we need them to, or the J1s come slightly later than we need them to, and go home slightly earlier than we need them to.
Yeah.
Especially because Seaside is less seasonal. I mean, it really is the least seasonal coastal town that I've ever
This year was
experienced. It's
more than
amazing,
most,
right?
yeah.
So, you know, that's, we need workforce all year round. And so, you know, what I'm looking at is, yes, the J1 work visa program is all year round. You just have to find the places that people can come from.
For the people
But-
taking gap years or.
Right, yeah, but
Gap terms.
there are also territories, U.S. territories that don't require the J1 work visa program, that, you know, if it was a lot of folks in Seaside and we could hire from those places, you know, if we had some agreement with a hiring agency or something there,
Yeah.
then we could get that housing year-round rather than just, but
Right.
what is required is those bunk houses, you know, those dorm-style housing.
The other side of it is, when we look at the revenue that would come into that, it would pay probably 60 to 70% of the mortgage payment for that building for SEPRD. So, it's,
Has a nice ring to it.
yeah. And I know that they had we're supposed to have a meeting last night, it was canceled. Sounds like they're getting really close to having a consultant picked out for what they plan to do. So, you know, we're kind of at that point now where we're like, okay, businesses, how many beds do you want to sponsor? And, you know.
And that would
That way we-
require conditional use, most likely.
Well, you know, I talked to Kevin, and he said that based on the zoning there, that you can have in any dwelling up to 5 unrelated people. And so based on the square footage, I believe we could get 10 to 12 dwellings into that square footage, and it would still be within the code. So they wouldn't need a conditional use.
That would save you some time.
Yep.
And money.
Yeah, so if we have to go around it, then we can, you know, go through the process of doing that, but he thinks that there may be a way of being able to do it within the existing ordinances.
I give you some challenges with retail side as well. So, besides the hotel and restaurant, so masks in and out. So, as far as retail goes, most of the customers are going to be required to wear masks, as well as all the employees. The cleaning protocols are going to stay in place. They have to. And until we get to that 70-80% vaccinated.
Let me address that for a moment. I heard somebody just in the last couple of weeks, and I think it was somebody in the CDC, had said that all the cleaning protocols are theater. That very few cases.
They're only theater until somebody sues you.
Exactly.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is I think we will see a lot of those requirements or expectations. You know, your
Right.
guests will want those to happen, but as far as the requirements of having all those things all the time.
Well, that's, doing all the cleaning is required, obviously, a lot of upfront hours and after work hours. So as we increase employees, you're going to see that the retail hours are going to change earlier and later. So we anticipate that. We're seeing more demand for prepared foods. And we're talking about as opposed to takeout. So prepared to take it back to the rooms and microwave it. And changing hours. And employee issues, we're seeing labor costs are going up. People are demanding more money or they're moving somewhere else. So we've been forced to respond by increasing wages. Along with that, as far as grocery store side goes, bottles and cans are still a big problem. But I know several people are working on the central bottle and can deposit place. We're seeing OLCC has been very, very responsive and helpful, or at least for our side, because we do liquor as well. We're seeing an uptick in prices on the supply side. At the same time, we're seeing the supply line slowing down. And so we're scrambling to get to re-inventory as we go along. So that the stuff we saw early on in COVID is starting to happen again now.
What kind of types of products are you seeing it on? Because at least on the restaurant side, it's hit and miss. It's one item here, one vendor there, and our suppliers are generally finding an alternative.
Mostly dry goods and cleaning stuff, and toiletries, toilet paper, the usual stuff that goes right away. And we see a business uptick. So we're seeing a real increase in people coming to Seaside. The store count's bigger, the average purchase is bigger, drinking more alcohol, which is good. And so more people are taking things back to the rooms and cooking whatever, so we're seeing an increase in that.
I think there's definitely, we're at a time where on the supply chain, it's where it was always, this is my supplier. Now it's, I need every supplier that I can call.
They're telling us it's trucks and drivers. And they say that's the big bottleneck for them.
Well, and I know there's a big bottleneck in the shipping for anything coming from overseas. When I was just down in LA a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago now. Anyway, there were literally 70 container ships sitting outside of San Pedro waiting to go in to be unloaded.
Yeah, they just can't get drivers. So, anyway, but we don't have to, we have problems that are solvable. It's not nothing the city has to do except for the employee side. It'd be nice to keep the wages reasonable, but I don't think that's going to be possible. We're competing.
Yeah, I think we're going to see,
all up and down the coast.
I think we're all going to see pricing increase on everything.
Well, just for the
To pay for
restaurant, I mean, we're reopening our restaurant in a couple weeks, and, when you go from $6 a box for gloves to $38 a box for gloves, and we go through 2 boxes of gloves a day. So, that money has to be made up. So when people last year were shocked about a $39 steak, they better prepare themselves for a $49 steak because wages and supplies and food cost is nuts. I mean, it's just absolutely nuts. And so,
Cedar Plain salmon doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, man.
You can't get the same bites unless you pull from the house here.
It's a big menu for a restaurant, and their prices went up 20%. And they're going to announce them next month, so it's just like.
Yeah, we're getting ready to do the price increase on our menu.
And people are gonna scream about it, but they're gonna pay it.
Well, same thing's happening in Portland and Seattle too.
Well, what we have here in Seaside is it doesn't matter how many tables you put out. they're going to be filled,
Exactly.
regardless of what the prices are.
Regardless
We're
of
in a
what you
we're in a
charge.
lucky position that way. We're
Wait
not
and
in
see
a
hours?
neighbor,
I'm not sure about that.
we're not in a neighborhood setting where somebody has 50 different choices within a, you know, they go somewhere here or they don't eat.
Well, I wonder what Seaside, or what Safeway's uptick has been, because they have to, I mean, you're in the grocery business too, I mean, so
The
like,
prices are going sky high as well.
Right.
So all suppliers are raising prices.
yeah.
So
And they're not gonna go back down. When all this stuff is fixed, I'm sure nothing's gonna go back down.
it's not like gas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, yeah,
Big full bag.
like this is like your norm.
Only if it's plastic.
So, yeah, so
And that's the thing, like you said, it doesn't matter how many tables we put out, they will be filled and how much we raise the
Exactly.
prices. And it's just, I'm really worried, I know we all are, and we don't have any solutions to it, but just the burnout, I mean,
It may be a point where we just have to close a couple days a week,
it's,
just
yeah,
so.
it's crazy. And then I can
because-
tell though when other places are closed, like you're like,
Yes.
what the heck is going on? Like, I mean, suddenly, like, I was like, oh, it'll be nice, easy Monday night, or whatever, like, we'll be steady, and then suddenly,
Just never text me before that.
I know, oh my gosh, if we text, I get, yeah, it's crazy, he's great for business. But, yeah, it is just, it's unbelievable. And you can tell when restaurants are taking their days that they need to close, because
Oh, yeah.
Because
we
it's a
all
Tuesday
get
and a
it, and
Wednesday.
that's
Because it's a-
cool,
yeah.
but
And
it's,
exactly, the
yeah,
person who
tomorrow
calls,
at 10 a.m.
stays
to
at the
close.
hotel goes,
Please don't do it all on the same day for the hotel.
I know, I feel like.
because everybody comes back and goes, well, this
Nothing's
place
open.
isn't open, this
I
isn't
almost
open, this
think
is.
we need to work that out too.
Yeah, but just, I mean,
Close by days.
we close Tuesday, Wednesdays, and a lot of places close Tuesday,
Tuesday,
Wednesdays for a reason.
Like Osprey.
You know, those are just historically the lesser
Monday,
days.
And I-
Monday has historically been a restaurant closed day.
Right.
In my-
But here with holidays and stuff,
Yeah, no, in my
that
experience
doesn't
here,
work.
have you
like,
got
that's not a
any
big
statistical
deal.
information from Tolan or the CASA about how BRDs are going, the rentals?
Uh,
Summer?
They're busy.
They're busy?
And they're longer stays.
Yeah.
Their tourism taxes up, the income is up.
They're not only are they busy, but they're
Record
longer
high
stays
levels.
in those type of facilities. Like my cottages I don't rent them anymore at a day or two anymore. That right now, currently, this week, I have 3 cottages and all 3 are rented for at least 6 days. The house has been rented for 8 days. I mean, those people are now booking those type of units for longer stays.
Through September?
Mhm.
So we have, what, around 1,000, I think, on Tourism Advisory Committee, they were showing for the room, they have the map of, I mean, it's around 1,000 homes that are vacation rentals. I mean, that's a lot. I mean,
And, yeah.
Well,
Over there.
no, in Seaside.
Not BRDs.
Not BRDs.
No, there's about 350.
And yeah, I think
Really?
that-
I thought it
Yeah.
was like 900, is it?
No,
Where was
that's
the, what was
total,
the
that might be
map?
total.
That might be
hotel
Cannon
rooms.
Beach, because Cannon Beach.
What was that, do you remember
I
that
remember
map?
that map, but it wasn't for that, it wasn't for VRBs, it was.
John.
But I know, because I pulled the numbers the other day, it's like 322 for VRBs right now.
Yeah.
But even so, most of them are getting longer stays.
From those is over $1 billion a year.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I said, people are just staying longer, because like you said, more people work from home. As long as you've got good Wi-Fi, you can work from wherever.
Mayor, did you just say that it was over $1 million in room tax that we're receiving from them?
Yeah.
Wow.
So those people are staying longer, of course, then eating more places and the same thing
Well,
again.
that's the problem, is we just don't have it. That's why people are looking for prepared food so they can.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So,
What's happening to your catering business? Is that turning up again?
Well, it is and it isn't. We have a lot of requests for catering, but the restrictions on the number of people gathering is still in place. So, you know, with the ballrooms have been completely shut down because essentially a ballroom that could have 300 people could have 50 people now. So, you know, with spacing like this, you know, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So there's not a lot of requests for larger gatherings, and the larger groups that we were catering out of the fairgrounds have chosen not to have their events this year too, for obvious, you know, because they can't.
Vegas has had the same issue.
Mhm.
They've been having to, you know, telling groups of 50 that they need a 2,500 square foot, you know, ballroom.
so
But
how's
now
that
Vegas is
affecting
no
you?
masks, no nothing. I have a cousin down there like today, and he said there's no masks No masks
I
I tell you what, when I was in California 3 weeks ago, it was nothing like it is here.
No.
Yeah, I think
It's
it's
so
like-
much more relaxed.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we need to recall a governor.
Good luck with that. I think that's what I have. So the convention center is not seeing an uptick, or is it?
No,
in
No.
bookings?
and bookings.
There are bookings coming through, but nothing's happening. So they're booking out,
Yeah.
but as we go along, then things cancel.
Oh, okay.
Well, for example, the Elks weekend,
Yeah.
they plan on having over 300, 400 people, and the hotel was full in advance, and then a week prior, they announced that we were going back up high, and then they could all of a sudden, instead of 400 people, 300, 400 people, they could only have 50. So it happened on the dance competition as well. We actually set up a TV in breakfast room at the holiday so the moms could watch their daughters perform over here across the river because they weren't allowed in. So,
So you can imagine what we would be dealing with if we had conventions? I mean, we're dying without them, you know, just as busy
Yeah, I
as
just
it
don't
is.
even know what I want. Like, if it's,
Yeah,
I mean, I
so-
wanted it done, but man.
Well, the thing is the business is there, and how amazing is it that the business is there? The business is coming, like,
Yes.
let's rejoice over that, because the business is here,
But we have
and we're
to
stoked about
survive.
it. But the problem is that the people who are in the key positions are doing all of the positions,
Yeah.
because we don't have anybody answering the call. I've had ads up for months. For housekeeping, I had 3 people over 2 months answer
Yeah.
my ad, and I'm paying for boosted ads. So like, nobody's answering, I'm paying above what they're paying in Portland, nobody's answering the ads. Even if they did answer the ads in Portland, I still have to have housing for them to get here, otherwise they can't
Yeah.
work at all anyway. So, but what it means is that, you know, the people who are willing to do the minimum are doing nothing. Because they don't have to, because of additional wage, you know, unemployment.
Yeah.
So the people who are okay with doing the minimum are doing nothing. The people who are not okay with the minimum are few, and they already have jobs.
Well, and also, like, right now, with the way school's set up, not that necessarily school should consider babysitting, but it kind of is, the kids are only there for half a day.
Hey, so
Parents
they
are having to
can-
do a lot, and if you are, like, more in the minimum job, that is so cumbersome. And then the cost, I almost don't blame you for staying home and being, like, short $200 a month, where you can work full-time possibly, and not get that time for your kids. I mean, I can see where they're coming from. I don't like it, I don't agree with it, but I see what I can see their situation, like, okay.
Or they're actually putting out more than they're actually
But
bringing.
yeah, yeah,
What's
totally,
the-
or leaving your kid at home.
Yeah.
And I'm not here.
What's the regulations about trailer parks?
In what way?
I know we have one in Venice Court. I mean, do we have actual trailer parks?
I've seen them.
3,000 trails.
But that's where people come in, but I mean, permanent.
We have one behind Mazatlan, one
And-
over behind, across the street from what was BJ's.
Right, that's small trailer.
And then there's
park.
also Venice right across from there on the other side.
So why aren't there, I mean, why, is it a zoning issue or is it a regulation issue that there aren't more of them? That's typically how low-income people,
It may just be real estate versus revenue.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean, the whole RV thing that we've seen through COVID
right, that's on the
and the
street,
homeless
but if we had
is
an
is
actual-
new, is a relatively new phenomenon.
Right. But there, I know there's a trailer court out on the highway out by, across from Rylea, sort of.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
That's
But that's-
elderly, or it's like a certain age.
Age,
Well,
it's
not
an
elderly,
age.
actually, it's really young. but
And it's been there a long,
Like
long,
50
long
years old or
time.
something.
But it's still an age limit, you
Yeah.
can't
The
have any
one, the
younger.
one behind Thousand Trails, those are more double wide.
Yeah. Not permanent. not-
They have
They
age
have some-
restrictions there.
They have some transient parking.
Oh, there's like, I think 12, I forgot about that, like 12 or 15
Yeah.
modulars. Yeah.
Yeah,
Because I know-
there's a bunch up there.
Is that?
There's about
It's like
40,
a
50.
cul-de-sac, right? type thing?
Right.
There's a loop.
Yeah.
but-
Below the
So
skyline.
at the hurricane in Louisiana, we saw a lot of the, you know, obviously a lot of people moved out of their homes and went to small trailers. And so there was a accommodation to make that happen on private property.
I think it's not so much zoning here, but just the availability of property.
Urban growth boundary does a ton to raise real estate prices.
but you're talking about increasing that boundary, right?
Yes.
What's the timeline on that, maybe?
It
It's the
takes,
earliest.
it takes a long time.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pushback, I'm sure, from the people that live, like, I believe,
That's right.
we've been talking about this, just south
Right.
of, what was the road that you come out on over past Circle Creek, I think, that there's that loop that people kind of always talked about, but I understand why those people don't. Yeah, they don't want us going out
Are
there.
there county restrictions on setting up a park?
I don't know.
It'd be a good one to look into,
Instead of being in the city, take it out of the city.
take it out of the city, yeah.
Because the land will be cheap, obviously, it's further down.
And then there's sewer and water
Right.
issues. A couple things that Brian Owen, who's at the school board meeting as we speak, told me is that they are going to be bringing in the volleyball tournament, but at a reduced size, maybe you all know this. And then do you know about Hood to Coast?
Yeah.
They have decided to put on their party at the end.
I heard that this weekend.
And no fireworks.
Right, and the fireworks.
And the fireworks are done, that's decided?
Yes.
The money
It's too
just
late for
didn't
us.
come forward, yeah.
Oh.
Well, it's too late to,
Fundraise.
it's, the part of it was the permits were not being given in time for us to make the purchases. So it was kind of it's just not.
Yeah, there'll still be all those people.
So,
who are-
Yeah.
so then we'll watch the Washingtonians who come in.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly right. It was pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
So on a point of clarification, when you were gonna get some things asked if there's anything that you could clarify for us, maybe reaching out to OSHA or the OHA about their guidelines, they don't make sense.
You know that.
Well, the last set, I mean, it doesn't make sense overall, but their verbiage, is like, okay, I understand what I'm supposed to do based off of your verbiage here. So on this, by the way, my pools at all three of my properties are closed. After having to call the police and have a family removed,
Yeah.
after getting personal threats, after having a discrimination phone call from the brand against myself because I would not let this family into the pool area because it was full, I couldn't, so I was accused of discrimination. We just shut it down. I've had 4 employees quit over pools being open, but this guidance, and I'm still not opening it because this is very unclear. So when you're dealing with, and this is from what you just sent me, so indoor recreation and fitness establishments, including gyms, indoor K-12, and specifically indoor pools, under the high-risk category right now, capacity is maximum of 10% occupancy or 50 people total, whichever is larger.
But everything else says smaller.
Yeah, that was the flip though, I think.
Yeah, but it was flipped on a couple of areas.
Yeah.
Because my pool area can hold 40 people. So I can either choose to do 4 or 40.
Right.
Which doesn't make sense. But if we get knocked down to the low category, if we get knocked down to low and we can open up more things, I can only have 25%. It doesn't make any.
The wording was definitely backwards.
In a lot of these areas, and it's like, okay, they're re-releasing this, and so you want to change? No, it's not going to change. It doesn't make.
If you bring it to their attention, they might get to it in a month.
Well, I brought it to Orla's attention because they're the ones that originally sent it to me, and I called several very smart people, and I'm like, okay, am I just reading this wrong? But no, it literally says that if I wanted to, I could just open it up to 40 people.
I will put a message out to OHA. I've accumulated a contact at OHA that I'll bring it to their attention.
My question is, so do you really want to ask them now, or do you want to wait until we get lower?
There's an issue.
Well, I mean, it's.
What if it flips, they're like, oh, you're right, thank you, Brandon Graff.
Well,
Yeah,
You can only have 4.
I'm not the only person that has come up with this
I'm just
question.
saying, like, maybe we wait till.
I'm not opening it until they say they can go 100%. I'm not opening it, period, because I'm not going to have staff quit. I'm not going to be yelled at and screamed at and have to call the cops to have guests removed from my hotels anymore. So I'm just.
Or
done.
open yourself up to liability.
Exactly. So it's just,
And it's not reducing your occupancy to close the pool.
no, it's
No.
not.
You're better off to do
It's
that.
a lot of thanks.
There's some pushing out there.
It's just that for one
Your page says you have a pool. We do.
Yeah.
Yes,
You
yes.
just can't use it.
Exactly. Wave out to the window.
Like one of those, like, viewing pools or something.
Yes, it's a viewing pool.
So are you requiring people to have
They would probably know, right?
masks in your corridors?
So, the stance that we have taken is,
I don't know if they know what they're doing.
well, until the ruling came out today, be the developed policy or not, what we have taken over the last 3 days, because that's as long as it's been, was if they say that they have a vaccine card, great, thank you, we're not going to argue with you. I'm not going to stand here and have a yelling match over a minute walking through my property.
Do you ask, does your staff ask, if somebody's not masked, do they say, are you vaccinated?
That
No.
just started today.
What I did tell people.
Because it just came out today, and what we did was, oh, can I offer you a mask? Oh, I'm fully vaccinated,
Well, we
great,
just-
have a good day.
Just
Yeah.
came out and said, if somebody comes in unmasked, you have to have a plan and a way of
Right, you have to
verifying that
have
they're
a-
vaccinated.
Right, and that came out like 4 or 5 hours ago or
Yeah.
something like that.
Something right there.
Yeah, it's
On Sunday, I
ridiculous.
had people walk in and-
Again, you cannot ask them if their dog is legally a service dog.
I could tell they were vaccinated
You can
and
ask
had
what their
service
dog
walk.
is trained to do.
Yeah.
No, you can ask them if it's trained to do something, not what it's trained to do.
Ah.
You can ask them if it's trained to do something, yes, it is.
And 90% of them go, what do you mean?
And then they try to, they ask you, can I have a bowl of water for my dog?
Right.
No, that's not
Your
normal.
dog is barking while they're sitting at the table, it is not a service dog, but we have to ask people if they're vaccinated, it just doesn't make any sense, it makes no sense.
But you can actually, I mean, side note, if they're barking, if they defecate, which I've had that happen twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can just have.
Oh, I know that, I know, but
But you can't
I,
have them remove the animal, you can't ask them.
It's not really a huge problem.
Well, you could.
Well,
they'd have to
now
do
that the
because people
CDC
that
has
haven't
come out
had
and
the
said
dog
you don't need to wear
before.
masks, now it is going to be an issue.
Yeah.
but just the fact that we
Our
cannot
just got
ask,
worse
right?
Oh,
rather
yeah.
than better.
I mean,
Yeah.
what the dog is trained to do, but we have to ask about vaccine, I mean,
But
it's
to me,
just,
you know, it makes sense because it's not for the people that are using it, it's for the people, like, to me, it makes sense if people actually have an issue. But like I said, I had vaccinated people that had their service chihuahua on Sunday, and I'm just like, okay, whatever.
yeah. So-
Anything else anybody wants to bring up or?
Yeah. I'm hungry, I want to go home.
I'm a Bill.
Hey, Bill,
Poor Bill.
there's nobody keeping you.
You're right.
And I know a couple of good restaurants in town.
You do, but then.
It's Tuesday.
Are you being held by social obligation, Bill, is that it?
It's open.
Thank you
I want to
all.
thank you all
Thank you.
for coming out.
And we'll follow up on those.
Thank you.
And thank you for holding this.
Yeah, I'm super stoked that someone's.
Thanks,
I
wish
know
there were more
that people
people.
always take it seriously, but it's great to have you plan a few things that are being heard, especially long-term.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I know
But
we
it's
looked
one of the
at
long-term plans is
our-
for us to come up with a destination plan, you know, where we can look at where Seaside's going to be in 10 years, and planning for that, as opposed to just
Thanks
being
to the
behind the eight
convention
ball.
center staff.
thanks, guys.
I didn't see your tricycle out there.